Alrighty. And I think if other folks join, that's great, but I think we could go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining a 4 p.m. meeting. I know that's always a challenge, but like I said, this meeting will be recorded and then publicly posted on the Delta Institute website on our RFP page. And all of this information that I'll be going through today can also be found in the RFP document, which I will post the link to in the Teams chat. So you're welcome to follow along. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Jamie Zuris. I am a senior specialist at the Delta Institute, and I am the project manager and principal contact for the South Shore Resiliency Planning Project. So I'll be overseeing and coordinating all the different elements of project implementation, planning, procurement, budget, and reporting. And with me on this call from Delta are my colleagues, Michaela Gonzalez, who is the program lead overseeing the project. We have Lucas Chamberlain, who is a program specialist, who has actually worked on this initiative since 2023, where we had a previous scope of work that we're picking up again now. And we also have Helen Hardy, the Delta Chief Financial Officer, who will be managing the contracting process. And together we will all be answering questions at the end of this presentation. So before I get going, just a brief housekeeping reminder to keep your mic muted if you're not speaking. And we will be answering all questions at the end of the presentation. So first, a little bit about Delta Institute. We are a 501c3 organization based in Chicago, but we work with communities across the Midwest to address environmental, economic, and climate challenges today so that we have a more resilient and equitable future tomorrow. From big city centers to rural and farming communities to brownfield sites, we collaborate on the community level to address environmental, economic, and climate issues. And we've been around doing this work since 1998. So we've been around and are a trusted face in the community in the Midwest for over 25 years. So Delta has three primary programmatic work areas that include resilient agriculture, where we're working with those rural and farming communities to improve soil health. Nature-based climate solutions is another one, where we are helping communities leverage municipal funding to alleviate flooding, extreme heat, and beautify spaces. And then we also have our third work area, which is sustainability and support services, which is what brings us here to this project today, where we work to support community-led plans that secure external investments, result in the creation of more tools, and encourage regional alignment, all with the focus on centering priorities from communities that are disproportionately affected by flooding and climate change. So in today's pre-proposal RFP meeting, we will be walking through some background information about this project, a little bit more detailed on the scope of work that the RFP calls for, in addition to what the guidelines, submission information, and review process will look like for the RFP. And finally, we will open it up to question and answer. So, as many of us are probably well aware, Lake Michigan shoreline is interrupted and disconnected in a lot of different parts, resulting in fragmented areas of natural habitats and parkland. And so we know also that shoreline impacts are compounded by climate change, in addition to systemic failings and legacy injustices. And this is particularly true on Chicago's south side. And a lot of the neighborhood residents there, that are directly affected by those issues don't really have the option to relocate or necessarily the capacity to do anything about it. So we also know that there are a lot of different shoreline resiliency efforts going on in Chicago and across Illinois. But there isn't actually a community-based plan that unifies all these different processes. And so to address all of these challenges, Delta was awarded funding that was administered by the Coastal Management Program, which is part of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. And federal funding from that program actually originates through a cooperative agreement between IDNR and NOAA, their Office of Ocean and Coastal Resource Management. So that's kind of what brings us here today. So our 2-year project includes working with South Shore community groups and stakeholders impacted by shoreline flooding and wave erosion to create a robust community-based resilience plan, coastal resilience plan, that is really actionable and rooted in what the community wants and needs. So part of that resilience plan will include available investments and financing opportunities for longer term resilience planning that the City of Chicago and state and regional agencies can leverage. And it'll also include design plans for an infrastructure project inclusive of shoreline habitat preservation and creation, which is the part of the project that brings us to the scope of work today. And our hope is that this plan, this community-based plan, which will focus on the South Shore neighborhood of Chicago, generally with the boundaries pictured in the screen there, will act as a guide for other communities going through similar challenges, and that it can be replicated across Lake Michigan shoreline and in other bordering water bodies, such as the Mississippi River Basin communities. And through this collaboration, we are also working with public agencies to make sure that all the planning efforts are aligned. So I mentioned we are working a lot with the community. It is a community-based resilience plan. And so pictured on the screen are some listed some of the organizations we have already been engaged with, and there are many more. And then on the right there, you will see some of the organizations that we have been supporting more recently through tree planting and kayaking events. Those were events put on by Rainbow Beach Advisory Council to support their efforts and connect with stakeholders in the community and create those relationships and promote our project deliverables as well. So these are some of the members that are part of our Community Advisory Council, our CAC, which Delta convenes monthly and has been doing so since 2023. So these are community members, organizations, South Shore residents that are active in discussions around community development and waterfront planning efforts. And the role is to provide crucial feedback on the project strategy, progress, and review deliverables to make sure they're relevant to the community members. And we do pay our council members $25 an hour to participate, and we are currently recruiting for more members this winter. Additional project partners include CDOT, Chicago Parks, Army Corps of Engineers, Sea Grant, Metropolitan Water District, and many others. And we engage these stakeholders monthly and on an as-needed basis to receive updates about their resiliency efforts that they're working on, which are outlined in a previous scope of work that we did, but largely right now are including the Chicago Shoreline General Reevaluation Report and the Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study, which Army Corps and Chicago Parks are engaged in right now. And I'll also mention that Delta CEO Bill Schleiser also sits on the Chicago City Council's Shoreline Advisory Board, which is overseen by the Department of Environment and chaired by Alderwoman Maria Haddon of the 49th Ward. And that board aims to promote robust community engagement and allows Chicagoans to provide insight and feedback into some of the shoreline work that Chicago's doing. And so we have that touch point as well, where Bill acts as a liaison to communicate the community priorities to the city. So just to touch a little bit on what we've learned so far through our past scope of work. Like I said, we've been convening the Community Advisory Council for several years now. Lucas did a lot of work doing public outreach and engagement to better understand where community priority lays in regards to flooding and erosion in their neighborhoods. And what resulted from that last scope of work are primarily two deliverables that we are carrying through to this scope of work to act as the foundation for understanding the status of all the different elements that are happening, because there are a lot. And the two bolded bullets on the screen are the existing conditions report and the coastal resiliency roadmap, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And what we heard from the community in the last couple of years was that safety, economic development, and affordable housing remain top priorities in the community, but they were also very concerned about flooding and erosion, particularly around public parks and streets. And they were really interested to learn more about neighborhood scale green infrastructure solutions and climate resilience solutions, and how that might look in their community. We also know that received feedback that there needs to be additional education around the impacts and solutions for flooding and erosion, and an emphasis that any planning that takes place must align with the ongoing planning that's taken place at the local and regional level, to make sure that the community voices are, really being actioned through other parts of the city. So while more education is needed in the community, we also heard from our Community Advisory Council that specifically the community wants to be educated on solutions that are feasible in their community. So they don't want to learn about a green infrastructure project that sounds all nice and dandy, but then wouldn't actually work in actuality in their community context. So they want to learn about what's feasible in and what could take place in their community. So that's kind of what prompted us to seek planning and design expertise through this RFP right now in the project, so that we are presenting education and plans and ideas to the community that have realistic plausibility for implementation. So that brings me to the RFP. and it is broken into 3 different tasks, but really 2. The first one is really figuring out, like I said, what is feasible in the South Shore neighborhood for either a green infrastructure project or a project centered around coastal and climate resilient solutions. The second part is conceptually understanding what that project might look like in the context of the neighborhood. The third is project management. And all of these tasks are scheduled to be completed by June 30th, 2026. And our budget for this from the IDNR and NOAA is $35,000. So getting into the details a little bit more, we're really focusing on these 7 locations, which are locations identified as hotspots for flooding and erosion in the previous scope of work, to identify what solutions are feasible in these hotspots. And we recommend folks get started on reviewing some of our last deliverables in the scope of work to get a better sense of the existing conditions in the neighborhood and how we kind of came to those hotspots and this project. So the first one is in the first appendix is Delta's existing conditions report, which outlines the many plans and initiatives around shoreline resiliency efforts that the community-based plan we're creating must be in alignment with. The second appendix is the South Shore Resiliency Roadmap, which outlines the continuous project work that's taking place and what's been done so far, as well as details about additional community engagement, education, and planning that needs to occur prior to the development of a actionable community driven coastal resiliency plan. And it also outlines some of the prioritization criteria, which I'll touch on the next slide. And finally is a resource that Delta put together in 2021, which is a green infrastructure design guide on stormwater management tools and green infrastructure best practices. And these are really just meant to be resources to the project team to build a robust product. So also part of this first task, we want to evaluate the identified solutions for those locations according to some criteria. These are the ones we recommend, again, based on the previous scope of work and research that we've done. And then we'd love to hear from the contractor, of the feasible projects that are being considered, which ones should be prioritized and which ones would a design engineer, architect, planner recommend as the project sequencing for implementation. So what those deliverables will look like for this first task include a slide deck and summary report. Can be really brief, just to convey the work that is being done, to simply lay out what is feasible and recommendations on next steps for implementation. It'll also include a virtual presentation to our Community Advisory Council, which meets monthly, to kind of talk through the different options. And then in addition to that, a in-person presentation that will take place in the spring at a date to be determined next year, that at an event that Delta will be organizing to bring the community together, to bring our state and regional partners together to talk about the options for South Shore. So the second part of the scope of work is to provide conceptual designs for which interventions will be prioritized. And we would love for that to include, a simple rendering mock-up, cost analysis, what permitting might be required to accomplish some solution for up to 3 of the interventions that come through the project. And so deliverables for that are the mock-up renderings and recommendations or initial estimates for implementation and installation. So for example, reduction in flooding or nutrient load, improvement in foot or vehicle traffic, what are the steps that should take place in order to implement these solutions. Finally, I won't spend much time on this. Pretty standard project management expectations to be aligned and communicating well with the project team. And then this is a Gantt chart showing you the span of the entire project. The relevant parts for the contractor on this RFP are in blue. So we're starting now in 2025 Q4 on securing a contractor, and we would like to start the scope of work starting the new year. And then, the first part will probably take place January to May, where the contractor is looking into what's feasible. We're having those meetings with the Community Advisory Council. We're having the in-person meeting at the spring convening and taking input from those touch points to then narrow down which solutions are feasible and mock those up to 3 of them, which we anticipate to take place from May to June. So now getting into some of the nitty-gritties. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. It's all in the RFP submission criteria. But one thing or 2 things I will point out is that we're looking for a fairly concise 5-page maximum proposal narrative. That does not include all the other documents listed on this checklist, but just the narrative portion. We are also looking for a detailed breakdown of the proposed budget. And anything else I want to point out here? I don't think so. Pretty standard, but if you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out. So here are some of our key dates. Our deadline for questions is this Friday, November 14th at 5 p.m. Central Time. Those will be emailed to Helen Hardy, who's here on the call. Her email is in the RFP document. From there, we will publish the questions online, and you will have until December 5th to submit a bid. After which we will have a little bit longer than normal review period, because we will be working with our Community Advisory Council on feedback to evaluate proposals, since community is a top priority in this project. But we do anticipate awarding a contract before the holidays. So we're targeting December 22nd, and that should set us up well for a project kickoff right after the new year. No need for hard copies submission. We would only like a digital copy, and you could email those to both Helen and I, whose emails are on the screen. And again, the deadline for submission is Friday, December 5th at 5 p.m. Central. And after that December 5th submission deadline, Delta will evaluate each proposal by convening a proposal selection committee consisting of at least 5 members, where we'll individually review all the proposals to determine if they meet the requirements of the RFP. And I will just note that failure to meet the essential requirements of the RFP may be cause for rejection of the proposal. And the committee may take independent random checks of the proposal's references, as well as any major subcontractors that are brought on. Disadvantaged business enterprises are highly encouraged to respond. And we are looking for folks that have experience in green infrastructure and or coastal and climate resilience design and feasibility, technical capabilities in site design, cost estimating, and permitting. We are looking for experience evaluating and prioritizing neighborhood scale stormwater and resilience projects, strong communication skills and project management skills, and perhaps familiarity with any local regulatory and policy frameworks that are taking place related to stormwater management in Chicago. Okay, so I'll open it up for question and answer. But just want to reiterate that in addition to Q&A today, we'll be taking all the answers and any questions that come through email from now until Friday, and publish that on the RFP website so that folks get notified that all the questions have been answered. You'll also get an email from me with the answer responses. Encourage you all to connect with us further after this RFP process. A final thank you and acknowledgement of DNR and NOAA for providing funding, making this project possible. And a thank you to you all. All right, I'm starting to see some hands, so let's go, Susan.
I don't know if Cecily is going to ask the same question because she and I have the same question, or do have one question in common. In the RFP, the appendices were missing.
I apologize.
So there's divider
for that.
pages for that, but not, and yeah.
Thank you for letting me know. We will email those out. They might be publicly accessible on our website.
Yeah, I was wondering if they probably were, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody had access to them.
Thank you so much. We will send those out. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. What else do folks want to know? Yeah, Carmen. Carmen, you might be muted if you're speaking.
Hi, I was just wondering, when you talk about the community is interested in education, if like we have a lot of experience doing rain gardens and bioswales in high schools, would that be something that you're looking for? Like related to the proposals that we might have?
Definitely we would love to connect with you because we are in the process right now of collecting a bunch of educational resources, and we're doing our best to not create anything duplicative that might exist in the community. In terms of this RFP scope of work, we're really looking on the design elements and kind of the more technical aspects of implementing these projects. But yeah, would love to connect regardless.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dana.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering, with the hotspots that are experiencing flooding and erosion, is the flooding in the street, or is it actually like basement flooding also?
I can take this one, Jamie, if you'd like. So the hotspots come from our public survey that we distributed in 2023, and these were all anecdotal um, reportings of flooding. So we did allow a narrative to beyond just the location of flooding. So we did allow anecdotal narrative to be provided, whether if it was in the street, if it was basement, but we don't have a definitive answer if it was whether it was all one or the other. So it's pretty much just generalized flooding, especially that was occurring when lake levels were much higher, in 2019 and 2020.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And then with the intersections, what is the extent? Like, is it just literally the intersection, or is it down the numbered street towards the lake? Do you have a sense of what sort of area you were considering?
Yeah, I think what we had in the survey itself, the westernmost edge that we that was considered for anecdotal evidence of flooding was South Shore Drive. So that would be, that would even be not necessarily even in the street. So it was essentially like the South Shore Drive east to the lake.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Carmen, did you have another question, or is your?
Oh, so the projects look like they are like at a pre-design level. And I was just wondering on the engineering part, how accurate we have to be in terms of the scope of work and the budget that is needed.
So yeah, like you said, it very much is in the pre-design stage, and so it doesn't have to be exact because there will be additional work being done to narrow down the focus and to get additional studies on feasibility and implementation. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Sure. Anna.
Hi guys.
Hi.
So nice to see you again.
You too.
Yeah. Okay, just a quick question. So, I think that part of the problem with the flooding of the South Shore Drive or US 41, I'm not sure what's that name for it, is that it's design of the street infrastructure and not having like a proper mechanism for mitigation of any lake overflow. So I'm wondering, so whoever is selected to do this proposal, will it work with CDOT and streets and sanitation in order to integrate solutions and maybe work in conjunction with them so that the issues related to the street and the flooding are effectively solved, because that can be done. Thank you.
In short, yes, that is the goal of our intent here, is to have to offer options for flooding mitigation that is going to be in alignment with the existing infrastructure plans that CDOT is doing, and to make sure that it's all well integrated.
I would add to that that it is more important for us to know who has certain like jurisdictions or stake on the areas where we're focused on. So on those intersections or hotspots, to know here are the like the agencies that will be involved in permitting that location, or the site control, like who owns that site or has jurisdiction on that site, I think is more important than coordinating ahead of time with those agencies.
Right. And I would just like to add something. I'm sorry for taking so much time. So I shared that with the Delta. It seems that the Seventh Ward alderman, he's doing his own survey of the lakefront between 71st and 79th Street, that nobody knows like what is the ultimate goal of that survey, or whatever is he doing. So there is a kind of confusion about these disparate efforts in the neighborhood. I had a chance to get in touch with the mayor's office about this, and even CDOT, who is on the paper for this, is unclear about who ordered this, and all they know is that this is sponsored by some FEMA grant. So I'm not sure if you guys managed to get more information about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. We are aware of those efforts that have recently gone up, and have been in touch with Alderman Mitchell, and are trying to get in touch to find out more information on that. Because yeah, it definitely seems relevant and related to the project. So we are working on it. Let's go to Emily.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for all the information you've shared so far. I just had one question. I see that the mock-up renderings, it's listed as up to 3 green infrastructure projects. I was just in general having some questions about the budget and kind of what your thinking is in kind of opening it up to 3 mock-ups, and if you have any other guidance about where we would like to see most of the costs for the different deliverables.
I would say the number of mock-ups may depend on the level of detail and expertise maybe that the team has to focus on all the criteria that's listed in there. Michaela and Lucas, do you have any thoughts on kind of determining how many mock-ups and what it depends on? There's creative liberty is given.
I gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I was wondering if like there were things that you were foreseeing that might impact what that deliverable looks like.
It might depend a little bit too on the type of feedback that we receive from the community during that virtual meeting and that in-person spring convening. So like if we hear that there's a unanimous vote for one specific design, that might guide it a little bit. But if there's an even split between 2 and 3 other options, it might be worth exploring those as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I would also say one of the outcomes we're hoping from that design is more having something that we can use for like future grant applications for this community to implement those. So it wouldn't necessarily be like, it wouldn't be a construction ready design. It's really to put kind of a look on that location or on that intervention. And like Jamie said, we would follow the community feedback on which locations might, or which interventions might be preferenced. It could be, a single one.
Gotcha. That's helpful. Thank you.
Cecily?
I think you might have just hit on this, but I guess I was looking, you have a very clear scoring rubric for, for the practices. But you also mentioned a number of times that the community is going to choose what the interventions are that go forward. Can you just maybe articulate the difference between how those will be used?
I don't know.
Can I give an analogy?
Yes.
My analogy would be, I go to Yelp to look at people's reviews and like stars and stuff like that, but then I will get to choose where I go to eat. So I would say that we rely on someone with more expertise to tell us which of these designs have more tasty impacts and things on the neighborhood. And then we follow the lead of our community members.
Got it. So you'll be providing that to them, but that won't be the deciding factor.
I believe from my understanding, that's correct. Yeah, we'll use that decision-making matrix, or also where I should mention, if your firm has a decision prioritization matrix that is more aligned with these types of projects, we'd also be open to that. But we really want to provide the community with a pretty simple decision-making process. Yeah, the easier, the better, and the more easily understandable in terms of its impact, the better.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony?
Hi, thank you. My question is, in your envisioning of this RFP in its success, at its most successful, do you have a general ballpark range of where this work can, what amounts of budget, or what budget you could potentially receive from successful mock-ups of prioritized designs or general concepts from those designs? So it could inform who is selected on where to kind of prioritize these. I don't know if that's more of a cyclical question, like a cyclical concept, but do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of, you have a certain budget allocated for this contract, but you might have a larger budget for the implementation of the envisioning that comes from this contract.
Gotcha. So that's a great question, actually. Typically, the way these projects work is they build off of each other. And so I can't say I can give a definite answer into what additional funding might be looking like, especially in this political climate, as we move into the implementation phase. But I would say that would be an interesting consideration to work into the scope of work and deliverables and recommendations for that as different designs are discussed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Anthony, your question does make sense. And then just to double down on what Jamie was saying, we do not have implementation funding for the design. What we're doing is we want these designs that would come out of this RFP to be incorporated into a community plan, and part of that plan includes a funding plan for implementation, so that we could take that forward, to sources of implementation funding, like the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, or perhaps it could be incorporated into another planning project like the Army Corps, who we actively engage with, or another one that's ongoing. But to answer your question, we do not have funding for implementation at this moment.
Thanks, Lucas. Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, if maybe in part of your responses you could clarify what assumptions you would expect us to make about maintenance. And the nature of the question is, you identified technical, regulatory, some of the logistical considerations. And in the city of Chicago, one of the issues with previous green infrastructure projects that we've been part of is that they were fully able to be permitted, but one of the last hurdles was every agency at the city of Chicago asking who was going to be responsible for maintaining any infrastructure in the right of way in order to get the final approval. So
yeah, I would say you all, as the experts doing a lot of these work, like these are the considerations we want to hear about and that we want to make sure are included in the decision-making process. So what was the actual question?
Well, the RFP was saying to talk about some of the technical, regulatory, logistical considerations, and and I was wondering if you just could provide guidance on that being a very significant issue for green infrastructure. Will we use like the project ideas to sort of try to like push the city or push a department in the city to be more open to taking over maintenance, or is addressing the maintenance maybe one of the logistical considerations that has to be included in the plans?
Well, I would say certainly in your RFP, since that's not something that we had thought about, noting that is really valuable, and could be a part of, we could add that to our decision-making tool or our prioritization tool if, maintenance, a maintenance score would impact people's interest in it. Yeah, it's something we need to, I think about internally. Because yeah, that's a very good point, Jeff.
Yeah, and like Lucas said, we could think about that more internally, and when we publish and post the Q&A document to this RFP, we'll make sure to clarify that for you and others. Any other questions? If you do think of any other questions, just a reminder that you have until Friday at 5 to submit them to Helen. Carmen, excuse me.
I just wanted to know when you're going to post this video. For some reason, I was not seeing your images, and I want to see the whole presentation again.
Okay, yeah. I wonder if other folks had that issue. I'm sorry about that. We should have it up, if not this week, next week. And basically, as soon as our DevCom team has the time to upload it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Hearing nothing else, thank you all again for your time and engagement and interest in this project. let us know if you have any other questions, and if not, you'll be hearing from us again about the Q&A and recording upload shortly, and we look forward to reviewing any bids and submissions that come through. You guys have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
You too.
everyone.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.